Well, cocaine's illegal for a reason. And I think that's cause enough to worry about it. I don't like, as a parent, having to reinforce to my son that was a dopey thing for those chaps to do. I just think it's really silly. I mean, why would you? You're successful, you run around, you get lots of endorphins and everything else from exercise. Why do you need these drugs? I mean, it's as a person who doesn't drink or doesn't smoke and doesn't take caffeine and has never taken drugs, I don't understand it. I just don't. If you need a buzz, go for a run. So I don't know. I don't think I'm a good person.
The world would be a better place if that advice was followed.
Well, I don't understand why you need to take drugs. Why do you? I don't understand it. I've never understood it.
Bernard?
Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted here because the war on drugs has been so damaging and painful for everyone and hasn't worked. But at the same token, these guys are professional sports people who are taking some sort of substance which doesn't seem like it's either healthy or...
it's illegal, Bernard. It's illegal.
There's that. But there's been a lot of... I must say I'm in the drug reform camp in terms of trying to avoid all the pain and grief that comes from imprisoning people for taking drugs. I'd more likely see it as a medical issue that should be dealt with that way rather than using the justice system. America is, of course, the worst particular case of this, but we've had an awful lot of people put in prison, lives ruined because they choose to take a drug which affects them.
I just had a radical thought. You should create a virtual reality, augmented reality version of taking whatever it is, cocaine. I don't know what happens to you, but then you just put these glasses on, you see, these goggles, and you just have this trip. So it's like you're taking cocaine, but it's not affecting your body.
Okay, then. So it kind of replicates the situation where you might go out of the pub very late at night and find someone on the side of the street.
And you could choose whether or not to be arrested and put in prison.
No, it just shows you that none of us have taken cocaine. We have no idea what it does to you.
That is the problem. You can't choose not to be arrested. Does it strike you that CCTV may be catching sportsmen taking drugs in the early hours of the morning, but it's not catching a lot of people who really, really need to be caught, like the Piha arsonist? Because I was talking to a Chinese immigrant at that social function arranged by May, which she's mentioned and staged by New Zealand Asian leaders, and he was dismayed at the level of crime he perceives in New Zealand. He was saying back in China, in urban areas anyway, CCTV is quite ubiquitous and it's actually got street crime down.
Talks about enforcement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that people aren't sufficiently afraid that they're going to get done.
Yes.
That they still do it with impunity.
So is that what we need outside the fish and chip shops and the dairies and the liquor stores? And do we want to be that sort of society? Do we actually need batteries of cameras?
Big brother.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are already there. As we can see on the TV news every night, there seems to be a new example of a dairy or a liquor store being attacked. But it doesn't seem to be deterring people from doing it.
Well, everybody has a handheld iPhone, I'm told. Millions and billions of these things. And there seem to be plenty of people around to snap people doing naughty things and then posting them.
Yeah. Welcome to your new rapidly changing world, actually.
Evolve and adapt.
Evolve and adapt. Mei Chen, Bernard Hickey, thank you both. Always lovely to see you both.
We had fun. Thank you.
We did, and covered a lot of ground. On the panel today, thank you for listening. And coming up, Checkpoints with John Campbell.
Kia ora everyone, coming up on Checkpoint breaking news, Chester Borough's just found not guilty the Whanganui MP, that driving charge. We will cross live to the court. Also tonight, Solid Energy and their CEO Tony King has given us a long interview in an attempt, quote, to put the record straight. Armed robbery. Zach Fleming, our reporter, was interviewing a shop owner about having been repeatedly robbed. He left the shop to come back to the Checkpoint office and the man was robbed in the minutes afterwards. We are there too. Willie Jackson, he runs a charter school. The Labour Party opposes charter schools per se. What happens there, and mental health and the government's response to it. Busy Checkpoint. Do join us.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon, ko Katrina Batanaho. The National MP, Chester Borrows, has been found not guilty of a charge of careless driving causing injury. The MP for Whanganui has been on trial in the Whanganui District Court over an incident at an anti-TPP protest last year in which 2 women were injured. In her decision, Judge Stephanie Edwards says she was satisfied Mr Borrows was prepared to stop if he was told to by police and if he felt anyone was in danger. She says the prosecution had not proved their case. The Health Minister has shut down the call for an urgent review of the mental health system, saying the group behind the idea is a left-wing anti-government group. Last month, the community campaign group Action Station released a report showing people with mental health problems were unable to get help unless they deteriorated to crisis point. Today, it presented a letter to MPs signed by more than 12,000 people calling for a review of mental health and more funding. However, Jonathan Coleman says the government is already doing a lot in the area. And Dr Coleman says the group Action Station is at Parliament week after week protesting against the government. Solid Energy insists Pike River Mine is still too dangerous for people to go back into it. 29 men died when the mine blew up in 2010 and their bodies have never been recovered. Footage released last week shows 2 men and a robot inside the mine, and some relatives of the dead men say that shows it's not too dangerous for the bodies to be retrieved. But the chief executive of Solid Energy, Tony King, says the men in the picture are just a few metres inside the mine. He says further prospects for a manned entry deeper into the mine were checked by his company very carefully.
The conclusion that was reached was that there were still a number of fatal hazards that were present, and that even with the controls that we thought we could put in place, there remained residual risks which were unacceptable.
Tony King says his company is now working on an unmanned entry to the mine following a request from the government. Local Government New Zealand says it's aware of the tensions between the Mayor and Chief Executive of the Horowhenua District Council, and it could be a risk to council performance. The Mayor, Michael Fayan, says his relationship with his Chief Executive has become so difficult they can only discuss work-related matters within a new committee. The Chief Executive Relationship Committee is meeting for the first time tomorrow. Local Government's President Lawrence Yule says the communication between the Mayor and the Chief Executive is important.
The quality of the relationship between the Mayor and Chief Executive generally has a fundamental impact on the quality of the performance of the Council. So when there are tensions, that always runs the risk of that making the working environment for staff and councillors more difficult.
Lawrence Yule. An Invercargill ratepayers group says the city's deputy mayor should be coming clean about his ousting, not threatening legal action. The mayor, Tim Shadbolt, says Darren Ludlow has threatened to sue him if he tells the full story behind the sudden resignation. Mr Ludlow announced a fortnight ago he was overcommitted, but councillors have confirmed 9 of them held a secret meeting with the mayor beforehand to force Mr Ludlow to go because of his leadership style. Nobby Clark from the Invercargill Ratepayers Advocacy Group says Mr Ludlow threatening to sue is not going to solve the situation. New Caledonia's Loyalty Islands are bracing for Cyclone Donna. The storm, now a Category 3, is expected to bring wind gusts up to 230 kilometres an hour. Ben Robinson Drawbridge has more.
The maximum level 2 alert is in place for Uvea and Lifu Islands in the Loyalty Group, as well as for coastal areas of the main island. People have to be inside their homes or in shelters. The maximum alert will be extended to the entire east coast of the main island and to the island of Mare in about an hour. Meanwhile, in Vanuatu, disaster authorities have made contact with people affected by the cyclone in the remote Torres Islands. Reports indicate damage to houses and crops, but no injuries. Assessment teams are waiting for the weather to clear before heading out to the affected areas. This has been Robinson Drawbridge.
The search for an arsonist in the coastal village of Piha near Auckland has been hampered by the discovery of asbestos at a crucial crime scene. A local takeaway shop, 80's Place, that was gutted by fire early on Sunday morning was found to have the toxic substance. The Waitakere Area Commander, Inspector Scott Webb, says the forensics team was only allowed on the site this afternoon after it was made safe. He says the police are following several positive lines of inquiry. Cordons have been lifted in central Wellington after roads were closed this afternoon because of a bomb scare at a building near Parliament. It's 5:05. To sport, and after months of speculation, the Warriors standoff Kieran Foran has finally confirmed he's leaving after just one season with the National Rugby League club. A statement from the Warriors says Foran will return to Sydney at the end of the season to be closer to his children, although just which club he's going to hasn't been confirmed. He has, however, been strongly linked to the Canterbury Bulldogs. Foran can only sign for one season with the Warriors, coming to Auckland as he had tried to get over a series of personal issues. The All Blacks coach Steve Hansen says the one-off test against Samoa is vital to their chances of success against the British and Irish Lions. The test will be played at Auckland's Eden Park on June the 16th, a week before the opening test against the Lions. Hansen concedes the All Blacks traditionally start slow in the June tests and says he says they can't afford any rust against the Lions.
June historically has always been a bit of a struggle for us because you've got the need to bring players from 5 franchises together, and traditionally it takes a little bit of time. So having a game will allow us to speed that process up. We're playing an opposition that have played 4 or 5 games before this test match, and they'll certainly be ready.
Steve Hansen. Meanwhile, Sonny Bill Williams is an unlikely starter for the Blues in their Super Rugby match against the South African side, the Cheetahs, due to concussion. Williams suffered a head knock in the Blues match against the New South Wales Waratahs on Saturday night. The former Wellington Phoenix coach Ernie Merrick has been appointed coach of the Newcastle Jets for the next 2 A-League football seasons. That's the news.
Back to school for top league players.
From half-time in the first game, the publicity was totally dominated by the pathetic behaviour of 2 senior players who should have known better.
But what kind of school is best?
The charter school model, with its completely distorted formula for funding, is not sustainable. It's a con.
So is this a rebranding exercise?
No, it's not a rebranding exercise. It's about a good quality education system.
And what facts do you use?
You can recite your facts, and I'm telling you they're wrong, because there's no way the Stats Department for New Zealand keeps immigration figures into Australia. They simply do not.
We're taking the role from 6 a.m. weekdays. Morning Report with Guy Espiner and Susie Ferguson. Then on 9 to noon, the International Conservation Group investigating controversial genetic pest control techniques. And after 10, the original NSA whistleblower, ex-American intelligence analyst and codebreaker Bill Binney. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Taranaki and Taumaranui, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Fine spells today with only isolated showers, cloud increasing tomorrow and showers becoming widespread. Gisborne to Wairarapa, also Taihape, Whanganui and Manawatu. Fine today, high cloud increasing tomorrow. Horowhenua through to Wellington, cloudy periods with the odd shower. Nelson and Marlborough, cloud increasing, scattered rain developing this afternoon with heavy falls and isolated thunderstorms possible about the western ranges of Nelson. Bulla and Westland, periods of rain with heavy falls and possible thunderstorms in Bulla and northern Westland. Canterbury, Otago, Southland and Fiordland, mostly fine, however patchy rain about the Canterbury High Country today and areas of cloud or fog morning and night. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Coming up tonight on the programme, thank you for being with us, by the way, Solid Energy on Pike re-entry, the men who would go in and why the company won't let them, the pictures the families weren't shown, and the fact no one has ever been prosecuted for the deaths of 29 men. It's quite a lengthy interview with their CEO, Tony King. Also tonight, Labor doesn't like charter schools. Willie Jackson runs one. And Chester Burrows not guilty on that careless driving charge. We're going to go live to the court and we're trying to get Chester Burrows as well. Proceedings still taking place inside the court. Once they're over, our reporter Robin Martin will join us live. All of that coming up on a very busy program. But first tonight, armed robberies are so common in some parts of Auckland. Oh, no, hold on a sec. We've got Chester Burrows on the phone. Chester, are you there?
Yes, I am, John.
Thank you. Sorry, we're just bringing you in live to the program. Not guilty. Are you surprised by that?
No, and I'm very happy that the court saw it the way I did.
Okay, so how did you see it?
I saw it as completely reasonable and prudent driving in the circumstances, knowing what I knew at the time, which was that there had been threats made, and there was a protest going on outside and blocking our passageway. So that was the circumstance, and I think that was obviously I thought that was a reasonable way to proceed.
Okay. And clearly the court agreed with you, and far be it from us to disagree with the court. But if we look at the facts in isolation, you are a former policeman, you understand how to handle crowds, there were police officers there, you were inside the car. How great was the risk to you really?
Well, there was a woman who had been pretty aggressive, wandering around with a flag with a wooden staff on it, sort of a baton-sized staff. And I saw that as a threat. There were other things that were there which were also a risk. And previously we had a run-in with protesters, one of them who had climbed on my car. I was wary that similar things might happen again. And these things had all happened previously in the presence of the police. So, I was concerned. I mean,
Were you concerned? Were you concerned or exasperated? Had you just had a gutsful, and were you thinking, bugger you?
No, and that isn't the way that I think. I'm not a delicate wee flower, and I don't take offence easily. And I wasn't panicking. I knew exactly what I was doing and what my role and responsibility was.
A fairly tough cross-examination, I understand, from our reporter Robin Martin, who's going to join us later on the program in court today.
I thought that was interesting to have a senior Crown prosecutor and a junior Crown prosecutor prosecuting what they themselves called a routine charge, and I've never seen a Crown prosecutor prosecute careless use before.
Yeah, and you've also never had the experience of being on the other side of the process, right? You've prosecuted a great many people yourself.
Yep.
Clearly, once again, the court was persuaded by your defence, and you've been found not guilty. But
yes.
but the people who were there describe a sense that your behaviour was excessive, that you could have done more to avoid them.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, what the court found was that I drove reasonably and prudently, and I drove correctly in the circumstances. And it was interesting to note that none of the police witnesses criticised my driving, suggested I should have taken alternative action in any way at all. And the policeman in attendance at the time wrote on his traffic crash report that the entire fault lay with the protesters being unaware of their surroundings, and there was nothing about driving speed or the vehicle that was a factor in the incident at all. So the police must have known right at the start that there was going to be a reasonable doubt raised, and you've got to wonder why they brought prosecution.
Do you wonder why they brought prosecution?
Yeah, I do.
And have you speculated on the answer?
You can imagine that I have, and I don't believe the decision was made locally. So I'm a bit frustrated about that, obviously.
Where do you think the decision was made?
Well, I think it was probably made a long way up the tree, operationally, probably by headquarters in Wellington, which is very unusual for careless use of the motor vehicle.
And why would have the decision been made in Wellington?
I think probably the police worry about any accusation or any criticism, and so they've decided to bring charges as a aversion to risk. But, I was a policeman for a long time, and I've been a politician for quite a while now, and you make decisions, take decisions, and you stand by them.
Chester Burrows, MP for Whanganui, found not guilty in the court today on that careless driving charge, joining us live from outside the court as you hear. It's 14 and a half minutes past 5. Thank you for being with us. Let's turn to armed robberies. They are so common in some parts of Auckland that just minutes after one shop owner talked to our reporter about it, he was robbed again. Quite an extraordinary state of affairs. Business owner Tara Baines closed his Clendon liquor store for good, fearing for his safety after he was robbed 7 times in a week. He now has a dairy in Mangere that was robbed just 4 months ago. Today, just after our reporter Zach Fleming visited at around 1 o'clock, an armed robber struck again. It keeps happening, they say, and there's increasing anger about how long it's taking police to attend.
It's safe to say Sunny Sahota's fed up.
If I call for help, police never come.
With his father and sister, he owns 2 liquor stores in Otahuhu. He says he's robbed at least once a month. Just last night, he says 2 men ran in and stole more than $100 worth of RTDs. He called 111.
And they're saying no any police free on the moment. So I got a note even call from them after that. So getting the update.
So no one called and no one turned up?
No. From incident last night, no one called me after that. And no one contacted me about, you got a CCTV or we can see this or not.
And Sunny says when the police do turn up, they sometimes warn him not to talk to any media.
But I keep giving you the interview because I want something come up into the media. Otherwise, some things on the street happens that's not coming in the media either.
So they try and stop you from talking to us?
Yes.
The police say there's been no instruction given to staff to tell business owners not to speak to media, and the only time it is suggested is if the information could jeopardise an investigation. But Sunny isn't alone. The owner of the Trimmer Dairy in Papatawitoe was put in hospital 3 weeks ago after being bashed over the head in a cigarette and cash robbery. I tried to go speak to him about it today, but he said the police told him not to speak to any media. When I told him that he's allowed to, he said he was still too scared because he thought if he did speak to me, the police wouldn't investigate his case properly. Both Sunny and the owner of the Trimmer Dairy are members of a new collective called the Crime Prevention Group. Founder Sunny Koshal says he's heard of other dairy and liquor store owners being told not to speak to media. Tara Baines owns a dairy in Mangere. He used to own a liquor store in Clendon too, but he sold it due to crime.
1 week, 7 times.
And that was the worst week?
That's the worst week. We don't sleep 24/7, a whole week.
Robbed 7 times in 1 week. Now he says he's considering selling his dairy too.
We can sell it, so get out from the business.
Both Sunny and Tara say the solution is difficult because without punishment, they believe there's no deterrent. But they both acknowledge that punishment on its own won't work. At a meeting last night they both attended, Tara says he became frustrated because he says police aren't focusing on the criminals.
Police are telling us to spend more money in the shop. Who is the high shelf, bring them down. You clear all the windows, putting your CCTV camera is not right, just put on the right place. They're telling us, I'll get a pissed off,
Sunny's adopted a new night window, so as soon as the sun sets, nobody can set foot inside. But criminals are becoming more brazen, he says, coming during the day.
If police not helping us, government not do anything for against the crime, then we have to defend by ourselves. We have to do something.
Shopkeeper versus criminal, a situation nobody wants.
Yes, it's a situation nobody wants, but it happened again this afternoon. Quite a remarkable state of affairs. So we sent Zach back out to see Tara. If you're watching, Tara's standing over Zach's right shoulder on the live view outside his dairy.
Yeah, John, just after I left Tara this afternoon, around about 1 o'clock, a man walked into the dairy he owns, the McKinstry Street Superette in Mangere, with a gun. He walked up to the front counter and tried to buy 2 pies. But when he got there, he lifted up his shirt and said to the man behind the counter, "Hey, look, I have a gun, give me all your cash." Luckily, at that exact moment, a customer walked in, so the man ran away scared. They then called 111 straight away, and the police took, predictably, around 3 hours to get here, which, as you just heard, is a common theme in the stories we've been doing today. The men who work here say that they no longer feel safe working here because this isn't the first time this dairy has been robbed recently. 4 months ago, 3 or 4 people ran inside with bats and knives and robbed the place as well, violently doing so.
Yes, this is incredible. So Zach was talking to Zahara about being robbed. Zach came back to work. Tara was robbed. Response time, the police tell us they're looking into this, and their burglary response times generally, we've only just gone to them because all of this has happened this afternoon. They will come back to us with a response tomorrow. Coming up to 20 minutes past 5, you're with Checkpoint. Later in the program, Tony King, the CEO of Solid Energy that owns Pike at length. But let's turn now to Labour and charter schools. Willie Jackson runs a charter school. The Labour Party opposes them. In fact, one of Labour's core policies is to repeal the legislation under which charter schools currently operate. This was discussed by Andrew Little on Morning Report this morning. David Seymour called it a train wreck. Meanwhile, their candidate, Willie Jackson, says he sees no reason why any of the charter schools operating now should be closed under a Labour government. So, what next? Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Labour has been a vocal and unrelenting opponent of charter schools. It says the funding model of funding private organisations to provide education is deeply flawed. Willie Jackson heads the Manukau Urban Māori Authority, which receives more than $2 million in funding from the Ministry of Education each year, a third of which goes to his charter school Te Kura o Wātea in South Auckland. Labour's leader Andrew Little says if charter schools could show they had registered teachers and were teaching the national curriculum, they could stay open as special character schools. Mr Jackson says that could be an option for his school.
The area has seen clear benefits from the work that we do. So obviously I'm not going to sacrifice anything that we do just for a seat in Parliament.
The Education Minister Nikki Kay says that would be concerning if Te Kura o Wātea was being singled out.
There'll be a number of other partnership schools that would be saying why is there preferential treatment for only one and not all of those other partnership schools. What's important is the educational outcomes of those schools.
Mr Little says if any charter school could meet the criteria required by Labour, they could make the case to stay open. And he says allowing Te Kura o Wātea to do that would not be a special case because it was connected to a candidate.
There is no quid pro quo. I'm very clear our policy is opposed to charter schools. At the very least, the funding model is unsustainable. The conditions that the legislation allows for are unacceptable. We will not have charter schools.
Mr Jackson also questions why any charter schools should be closed under a Labour government.
Look, I think just about all the schools are doing well. There's been one or two hiccups, but there would be no reason to close, from my observations, any schools.
Mr Little says he does not see that as a conflict to party policy.
No, I don't think so. I think he's expressed his view, but the Labour Party policy is the Labour Party policy, and that's what we stand for the election on, that's what we're going to do.
Ms Kay says it's up to Labour to be clear about what its policy is.
If there's been a clear shift and they're now saying they're going to keep some open, they need to be clear to all of those partnership schools. What's the policy? What's the criteria? Because there's a whole lot of mums and dads who have enrolled their kids in these partnership schools and they deserve to know.
Willie Jackson also says while there's plenty of focus on charter schools, there are schools in the state sector that are performing very poorly and failing children, which have not come under the same degree of scrutiny. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
An open letter signed by over 12,000 people has been handed over to MPs calling for an urgent review of the mental health system. However, the Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, has shut down the idea, saying the group behind the letter, Action Station, is a left-wing anti-government group. Here's our political reporter, May Heron.
Last month, Action Station released a report containing stories of over 500 people who have had experience with the mental health system. A large number of people said they weren't getting help soon enough and were being turned away because they were not unwell enough. Laura O'Connell-Rapira from Action Station says it was incredibly important to collate those stories.
The debate up until this point has been about statistics, and statistics are important and facts are important, but often what can happen is we just start thinking of these things as numbers in a spreadsheet as opposed to, someone's brother or auntie or uncle or cousin or whoever it might be. And I think the powerful thing about the stories as well is that it activates your empathy, and empathy is a really powerful driver of change.
The report made 4 key recommendations: more money, an urgent inquiry, independent oversight, and an education program. Ms O'Connell-Rapira says all of them need to be implemented.
My concern is that we will chase the quick fix, which is urgent funding, and that is absolutely needed, but the funding alone will not fix this problem, and that is why an inquiry is needed to work out what the entrenched problems are within our system.
The Labour and Green parties received the letter and supported the recommendations. The United Future leader Peter Dunn was also there and says he'll chat about this to his colleague, Health Minister Jonathan Coleman.
I do think that reports like this are worthy of consideration. It may well be that some of the actions are already in train or can be done in a different way, but I think the conversation that's been initiated through this report is certainly worth having.
Mr Coleman says they're already doing a lot on mental health, and Action Station has a hidden agenda to change the government.
They're very left-wing anti-government protesters. As I say, Action Station's back on Thursday with another separate anti-government protest in the health area, and they could be back week after week with different topics. I mean, they clearly want to change a government.
Laura O'Connell-Rapira hit back, saying mental health should not be politicised.
I think that he would be shocked to learn that several of our members actually are National Party voting members. It doesn't matter whether or not you vote for a political party on X side of the fence. What matters is that you care about X policy being implemented and you want a vehicle in order to make that change, and Action Station is one of those vehicles.
Laura O'Connell-Rapira says the report on mental health has been distributed to MPs and she hopes to get feedback soon. From Parliament for Checkpoint, May Heron.
The police hunting for an arsonist in the seaside town of Piha near Auckland say the culprit is responsible for at least 15 fires over the past week. That includes the fire, of course, that gutted the local takeaway shop 80's Place early on Sunday morning. The area commander for Waitakere Police, Inspector Scott Webb, says they still don't know who's responsible or how they did it, but they are following several positive lines of inquiry. However, he says the investigation has been hampered by the discovery of asbestos at 80's Place, which meant the forensic team were only able to start examining the shop this afternoon.
There were a few delays in getting in to do the examination of the store due to some asbestos that is in that building, so we just had to make the scene very safe so fire and police investigators can get into that store.
How many pieces of information have you had exactly from the public? Because I know you have been urging people to come forward.
I don't know the exact number. What I can say is it's a steady stream of people calling through, and we're just encouraging people to continue to do that, because that is what's helping us with the inquiry, and any little piece of information is important, and don't worry about what level you see the information at. Just make sure that we're encouraging people to ring us with any information they have at all.
Is it just one person you're after or more?
It's too early to say, and I don't really want to go into the ins and outs of the investigation, because you can probably appreciate that could make things difficult down the track. But we've got a very open mind, and we're just wanting people to come through with that extra information.
Do you think they live locally?
Not sure at this stage. That is a possibility. What I can say is that just because the police are stopping and speaking to various people doesn't necessarily mean that they're a suspect. I mean, police have been talking to a large number of people that are helping us right across the board in the community, and because it's a small community, sometimes there is that fear that whoever the police are talking to may be a suspect. That's not necessarily the case.
How confident are you that you will find the culprit or culprits?
Well, working through it, as I say, it's some positive lines of inquiry. We'll just wait and see. We're still in the very early stages of the investigation, but the information that's coming through is very, very valuable. And we just want to reassure the Piha community that we are eager to solve this case and get to the bottom of it, and we're doing everything we can.
They're all incredibly nervous out there.
They are. I've spoken to a few people and a few people who are, community leaders there, and they really are. So my message is that the police really want to assure them that we are working hard on this and have a significant amount of staff working on it for them.
That's the area commander for Waitakere Police, Inspector Scott Webb, who is leading the investigation into the Piha arsons, talking to our reporter Anusha Bradley. It's 29 minutes past 5. Solid Energy Chief Executive Tony King has broken his silence about the safety of the Pike River mine, insisting it is still too dangerous for people to go back into it. Mr King, who we will hear more from after 6 o'clock, also says he's shocked and disappointed no one has been held accountable for the deaths of 29 men at Pike River.
I think I'm probably like most people in New Zealand and am, shocked and appalled at what happened, surprised and disappointed that that hasn't been possible apparently to hold anyone to account for that. I'm a mine manager by training and background, and it was always part of my sort of ethos and expectation that laws were there to be kept and to keep mines and mine workers safe, and that if anything went badly wrong, then there would be significant consequences for those people who are responsible. So I am surprised and disappointed like most people, I think, John.
That's Solid Energy Chief Executive Tony King. We'll hear more from him at length after the news at 6 o'clock. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us. Katrina Batten, you can take over that and you can help yourself. Coming up on the program before 6 o'clock, they sit next to each other at council meetings, but Horowhenua's mayor and his chief executive's relationship is so bad they can't speak to one another alone. Vanuatu cleans up after Cyclone Donna, and the publican of the 140-year-old Cust Hotel promises a ripper of a night tonight when he pours his first beer in a month after an administrative bungle left him without a liquor licence. Lots ahead of the program, including Tony King at length. But first, before all of that, Katrina Batten.
The National MP, Chester Borrows, has been found not guilty of a charge of careless driving causing injury. The MP for Whanganui was charged after 2 women were injured at an anti-TPP protest in the city last year. The Judge Stephanie Edwards said she was satisfied Mr Borrows was prepared to stop if he was told to by police and if he felt anyone was in danger. Speaking on Checkpoint, Mr Borrows says he's very happy the court saw it the way he did. He says his driving was completely prudent and reasonable in the circumstances. The Health Minister has shut down a call for an urgent review of the mental health system, saying the group behind the idea is a left-wing anti-government group. Action Station today presented a letter to MPs signed by more than 12,000 people calling for a review of mental health and more funding. Jonathan Coleman says the government is already doing a lot in the area. New Caledonia's Loyalty Islands are bracing for Cyclone Donna. The storm, now a Category 3, is expected to bring wind gusts up to 230 kilometres an hour. Officials say reports so far indicate widespread damage from the cyclone earlier in Vanuatu, but no injuries. Solid Energy insists the Pike River mine is still too dangerous for people to go back into it. The company's chief executive, Tony King, says the men in footage released last week are just a few metres inside the mine. Local government New Zealand says it's aware of the tensions between the mayor and the chief executive of the Horowhenua District Council, and it could be a risk to council performance. The mayor, Michael Fayan, says his relationship with his chief executive has become so difficult they can only discuss work-related matters within a new committee. And cordons have been lifted in central Wellington after roads were closed this afternoon because of a bomb scare at a building near Parliament. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. 27 minutes to 6. Let's go to the business news now with our reporter Jonathan Mitchell, who's beaming in with a magnificent shirt live from Wellington. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, Jonathan, has warned of the risks facing New Zealand.
Evening, John. It was a fairly healthy report card for the New Zealand economy. Solid economic growth underpinned by those things we've been hearing about lately. Strong immigration, rising commodity prices, especially that recovery in dairy and construction. But it has pointed out the risks. Solid immigration might reignite that housing market, and the IMF has suggested the Reserve Bank of New Zealand could have debt-to-income ratios as an additional tool to cool the market if needed, but essentially those have been put on the back burner. The government's ordered a cost-benefit analysis on those, so don't expect any immediate action now or before the general election.
This is interesting, this one, isn't it? Also, we've looked at this before, another settlement reached over unfair bank fees announced today, right?
That's right. This is this long-running dispute going for several years by the group called Fair Play on Fees. It's included tens of thousands of banking customers and has involved action against several banks, alleging the banks were ripping customers off with excessively high fees on credit card payments, overdrafts and dishonoured payments. We know that RNZ and Kiwibank have made settlements with this group. Today the group has dropped action against the BNZ Bank, but there's not a lot of detail that we know, and this begs the question, how successful has this group been in the interests of consumers? We do know that BNZ has said it doesn't accept liability. It has made a contribution to the group's legal fees, but we don't know if consumers or the banking customers have received any money at all, and action is continuing against Westpac Bank.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. We'll keep looking at this. What did the markets do today?
The top 50 index ended today down 14 points to 7,412, and the dollar fairly steady, just under 69 US cents and 93.7 Australian.
Jonathan Mitchell with the business news from Wellington. Thanks, Jonathan. They sit next to each other at council meetings, but Horowhenua's mayor and his chief executive cannot speak to one another alone. Instead, the mayor says their relationship is so bad that he and David Clapperton will now only discuss work-related matters within a new committee. That group, called the Chief Executive Relationship Committee, and we're not making any of this up, is meeting for the first time tomorrow. Edward O'Driscoll reports.
Michael Fayan believes problems first started when he was a councillor and raised concerns about the structural integrity of the council building.
That really hasn't helped with the relationship with myself and the CEO for that whole time that I was a councillor, and it's just rolled over into this council, really.
Mr Fayan says he wants to resolve his difficulties with the Chief Executive, David Clapperton.
I would much more prefer that there was a higher level of communication base. No two ways about it. I look around, I'm actually sort of quite envious of how many other mayors there are around the country I talk to that have no problems at all, but I do.
Mr Fayan also caused controversy when he tried to replace his deputy mayor, Wayne Bishop, even though his council said he couldn't do that. Mr Bishop is on the new relationship committee and says the current situation isn't effective.
It's sad that we find ourselves in a position where we don't have the highly desirable working relationship, I suppose you could call it, and that's one of the driving factors behind establishing a wider group to carry these out.
In Palmerston North, the chief executive of the City Council, Paddy Clifford, says the relationship with his mayor is very important. He says they officially meet twice a week, but their communication is not limited to that.
We share the same reception area, so I invariably see him every day, and we, pass the conversation there. But also evenings, early mornings, weekends, we text one another on particular matters so that we keep in contact all through the week.
The local government New Zealand president and Hastings Mayor Lawrence Yule says he's aware of the tensions at the Horowhenua Council.
The quality of the relationship between the Mayor and Chief Executive generally has a fundamental impact on the quality of the performance of the Council. So when there are tensions, that always runs the risk of that making the working environment for staff and councillors more difficult.
But Mr Yule doesn't think the bad relationship will affect council functions.
At the moment, the Council has a working majority to fulfil the things it needs to do. And it's not the only council in New Zealand that will have some tension between the Mayor and the Chief Executive. So in general, as I understand it, most things at Horowhenua are being delivered as a plan.
The local government minister, Anne Tolley, is also aware of what's happening in Horowhenua, but says there's a high threshold for ministerial intervention under the Local Government Act. David Clapperton wouldn't be interviewed, but said in a statement that he wanted to maintain a strong working relationship with the Mayor. For Checkpoint, Edward O'Driscoll.
Meanwhile, an Invercargill ratepayers group says the city's deputy mayor should be coming clean about his ousting, not threatening legal action. Now, the mayor, Tim Shadbolt, says Darren Ludlow today threatened to sue him for defamation if he tells the full story behind Mr Ludlow's sudden resignation a fortnight ago. Mr Ludlow said at the time he was overcommitted, but councillors have confirmed to RNZ 9 of them held a secret meeting with Mayor Shadbolt beforehand to force him to go because of his leadership style. Mr Shadbolt says he was going to say defamatory things, but will keep quiet now. So quiet that he's not talking to us. A spokesperson for the Invercargill Ratepayers Advocacy Group, Nolby Clark, says the real story is only slowly coming out.
You can read between the lines with that, but he's saying he's falling on his sword or resigning for workload purposes. But it has to be a bit more than a coincidence that less than a week prior to that, the councillors have a meeting without him, the other councillors do, and move a formal resolution to remove him. Then they agree to hold back that resolution until the mayor has a chance to talk to the deputy mayor. Now that all happens before he resigns, so you can add those two together and work out what the real outcome is.
Now, Nolby Clark says ratepayers deserve to know what is really going on, but the ball is in Mr Ludlow's court.
Oh, I think it ends by Ludlow just coming up front and being honest and saying, look, the bottom line is I'm still passionate about the work I do. I'm on a lot of committees, and he is. He does a lot of work for council. Some of the councillors didn't like my style, and that's unfortunate, but I'm here to serve the city. That's all you need to say, and that would have been an okay thing, but threatening people with legal action to keep quiet, it's not going to resolve anything.
Nolby Clark from the Invercargill Ratepayers Advocacy Group. Now, in the last hour, Darren Ludlow has confirmed he warned the council's chief executive he would look at his legal options should the mayor make any defamatory statements. He says he was not threatening to sue, but alerting the chief executive and Southland Times newspaper as a courtesy that he would defend his reputation. Asked why he had not told the whole story at the time he resigned, Mr Ludlow said he did not mention he was pushed by councillors to resign because he did not actually have to resign, and he chose to because of workload. That from Invercargill, 19-6, Colin Craig now, who wrote a personal letter to his press secretary saying that he physically desired her but had resisted kissing her. The letter is one of several read out at the High Court in Auckland today, where he's suing blogger Cameron Slater for 18 separate statements which he says are defamatory. Many of the statements relate to Mr Craig's relationship with his former press secretary, Rachel McGregor. Mr Slater has a counterclaim and is seeking over $16 million in damages. Our Auckland court reporter Edward Gay filed this report.
Mr Craig wrote to Miss McGregor just 6 weeks after she started in the job. Headed up Private and Confidential, Mr Craig, aged 43 at the time, starts the letter to his 27-year-old employee, Dear Rach, and goes on to say he's writing the letter after going to bed early. He told Miss McGregor that he wanted to give her a letter to read on her day off during the busy lead-up to the 2011 election. The letter included spiritual beliefs, quotes from the Bible and a poem. Mr Slater's lawyer, Brian Henry, read part of it that included Mr Craig recalling a conversation with a friend.
The other day, I got asked some questions. I have great people that keep tabs on me. Questions were, first one is, Colin, are you having an affair? Is that correct?
That's right.
Second is, do you think your relationship with your PA, in brackets, i.e. you, close brackets, is special?
Yes.
Third one is, have you kissed her?
Mr Craig then picked up the reading duties.
Well, obviously the answer to the first is no, unless I miss something, smiley face.
Well, what do you mean unless I miss something?
Well, one of the things Rachel and I did often, and I think will be very apparent from the communications, is we often bantered about something or joked around. I mean, that's just a joking, make you smile kind of comment.
Mr Craig continued reading from his letter.
The second question was interesting. I said yes. I am interested in your thoughts on this. I do think we work together amazingly well. Not only are we effective, but I think we are in tune with each other.
Mr Craig then addressed the question of whether the pair had kissed.
And again, obviously, the answer to the last question, that's QN, short for question, was no. Not that I wouldn't want to a lot, but that is a boundary.
Mr Henry asked him what he meant by that.
Rachel and I were very close, but we were also aware, I think, quite early on that there were dangers in being as close as we were.
Just weeks later on election night, the pair found themselves together alone in Mr Craig's office where they kissed. Mr Craig said he set about establishing boundaries in their relationship. Mr Henry asked Mr Craig about a second letter he had written to Miss McGregor in February 2012, where he gives relationship advice and expresses his spiritual beliefs. Mr. Craig continued reading from the letter.
Physically, I do desire you. There are some times I just want to kiss you and, well, go further. I am just being honest about this is how it is. I've resisted going down the kissing track and shall continue to do so. I've left the door open for you if you say you need that, and I want you to be brave and honest enough to ask as necessary, but I expect it would be infrequent, and of course there are still boundaries.
Mr. Henry then asked,
You wanted her to be your mistress?
No, that's not right. If you're asking me, did I desire her and was there a part of me that wanted that? Yes, but and it never happened because I didn't want to go there because I thought there were boundaries. This is an internal struggle that I'm explaining here. It's the struggle between what you might want to do and what is right.
Mr. Craig said this was his way of working through the issues. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi ko Edward Gay aho.
A proposal to set up a prison based on Māori values has found favour from Māori MPs on both sides of Parliament, but the idea is unlikely to gain any traction, with both the Prime Minister, Bill English, and Labour's leader, Andrew Little, appearing reluctant to support the idea. Here's our political reporter, Craig McCulloch.
Labour has previously opposed Māori prisons. In 2009, it called the idea mind-boggling. So it seemed a big turnaround when its corrections spokesperson, Calvin Davis, popped up on News Hub last night, suggesting at least one prison be run on Māori values. Today, Mr Davis is refusing to comment, and Andrew Little's running a different line.
It's not Labour policy, it's part of Calvin's thinking as he's coming to put a policy together. I don't have a firm view about a separate Māori prison or a prison run on tikanga Māori. What I do accept is we've got to look for different ways to run our correction system than what we're doing now, because it's not working.
But one of Labour's Māori caucus, Adrian Rurewhe, says they've told Mr Little it should be official policy.
It's totally in line with how staff in Māori focus units already operate, and so lifting it to another level will have really good outcomes.
The Prime Minister Bill English has shot down the idea, saying rehabilitation efforts already take Māori values into account.
It's incorporated into our prisons where it's appropriate. We just don't see the point of trying to designate, a prison as a Māori prison and other prisons as not Māori, because actually it's going to be Māori in all our prisons.
But there's disagreement within his party too. The backbencher Nuk Kuroko likes the policy and says he's discussing it with the Corrections Minister, Louise Upston.
I think a Māori approach to anything is really important, not only just prisons. If he can get some traction on that, that'd be great.
The Māori Party's long lobbied the government for Māori-run prisons, and its co-leader Te Ururoa Flavel doesn't think the proposal's dead in the water just yet.
The Prime Minister was with me probably about a week ago when we went in and saw some of the work that has been done on the outside, working under a kaupapa Māori approach to dealing with some of the issues that have long been associated with those who have been incarcerated for far too long. I think his heart is in the right place and understands where we're coming from. The long-term implementation and rollout is going to be something we'll work at.
And his co-leader Marama Fox isn't giving up either.
Eventually, in the future, this is going to be inevitable. I don't think it's happening now, but we need to look at what is the pathway to get there.
Māori make up about 15% of New Zealand's population, but more than half of all prisoners. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Craig McCulloch.
Let's head to France now, where President-elect Emmanuel Macron is wasting no time in getting down to business. The 39-year-old self-styled centrist who formed a political movement less than a year ago will become France's youngest ever president after the convincing win over his far-right opponent Marine Le Pen. He's now working together to put together a team in a government which can lead and unite a nation which has been deeply divided. CNN's Melissa Bell reports on his meteoric rise to power, not to mention the unconventional marriage which helped him along the way.
His march to power was as fast as it was determined. Only 6 months after announcing his intention of standing for the presidency without an establishment party, Emmanuel Macron beat the odds and the skeptics to win.
Je vous servirai. I will serve you with love. Long live the Republic. Long live France.
So what drives Emmanuel Macron? He was born 39 years ago in northern France to two doctors, but raised by his grandmother, a woman brought up by an illiterate mother and who passed on to her grandson her love of books. Macron excelled at school, first in Amiens, where he met a teacher who would go on to be his wife, then in Paris. A schoolmate there, Jean-Baptiste de Froment, says he was surprised to see Macron go into politics.
He was clearly ambitious, but I thought it was a literary ambition, you know. He wanted to become a writer. He was attracted to fame, for sure. But I'm not sure he was, from the beginning, attracted to, you know, politics.
But Emmanuel Macron did go into politics. The former banker turned political advisor was appointed economy minister in 2014 by François Hollande. It was when he was a minister that Paris Match took an interest, not so much in his political ambition as in his marriage to his former teacher, a woman 24 years his senior. In just a year, the couple's been seen on the cover of the magazine 4 times.
The incredible energy that they have together, you know, you can't separate him from her. She has been her teacher, and, you know, they always look at each other, and I think maybe because I'm at Paris Match, I like a romance, and it's a real one.
Since launching his bid for the presidency, Macron's independent candidacy has raised eyebrows, but so too has his attitude to his opponents.
People said politics would continue with its rules because we're so used to them. No, do not boo. We cannot unite around booing.
Now buoyed by the victory cheers of his supporters, Emmanuel Macron still faces a tougher challenge ahead, healing a divided country and taking his message of love to the wider world.
Melissa Bell with that report from Paris. Fascinating interview on Macron on Checkpoint tomorrow night. Something to look forward to. New Caledonia is bracing itself tonight for tropical cyclone Donna, which is expected to bring heavy rain and destructive winds of up to 230 km an hour. Now, the main island of Vanuatu, which had originally been in the forecaster's firing line, was spared, but aid agencies say they're still to gauge what may be severe damage and destruction that Donna brought to remote northern islands where some residents were forced to spend the night in a cave. UNICEF's Lachlan Forsyth is in Port Vila, and a short time ago I spoke with him via Skype video and asked him where he was last night.
Yeah, that's right. So we visited an evacuation centre where basically an entire community had gone to. Now, they lived in a very low-lying area, quite prone to flooding. And they were being quite proactive about that, obviously. And speaking to a lot of the people, it was like Cyclone Pam 2 years ago was a bit of a wake-up call because it had been quite some time since a really powerful cyclone had gone through. People had kind of forgotten how bad they could be. And so while, yes, Donna did pass without any real damage down here in Port Vila, people were making preparations. You know, they were putting up shutters, they were taping windows, the schools and businesses were closing, and entire families had gone to this evacuation centre. It was, quite encouraging to see just how seriously people were taking the preparations.
Yeah, and absolutely understandable after Pam. What about today? Where have you been today, Lockie?
Well, we went and actually had a look at went and visited some of the schools that UNICEF does work with, and we also visited just some smaller communities. One of them we found was still actually dealing with the effects of Cyclone Cook earlier in the year, and what we found is that the sheer amount of water there has waterlogged their crops. We got a hell of a lot more water over the last few days again, and so it's really putting pressure on these people to grow their crops, which is where their livelihoods come from, and support their children. And that's certainly one thing which is obviously a big concern for them. And so that's part of the work that we do alongside the government to ensure that all these children are being reached and just the basics are being provided for them in terms of shelter, medicine, clean drinking water, sanitation, the real basic stuff that means that every child gets a proper start in life, as they should.
Mercifully, Donna didn't do much damage on the main island. What reports are you getting from the islands in the north, some of them remote, cut off, and with small populations, about what happened there when Donna did hit?
Yeah. So last night we visited the National Disaster Management Office, and that they had radio operators who were contacting their officials, remote little islands, and one by one they were going through the checklist. It was how many buildings have been damaged, how many people are there, how are you doing for food, for sanitation, for water, how long might you be able to go without assistance reaching you. So really finding out where the needs are, where the requirements are, and it's from there that they can really, if they need to, the government can go to the aid agencies and say, look, we need assistance with this or that or whatever it might be. But certainly it's still stacking up what we've been saying over the last few days. There has been damage and destruction to a number of houses there, but it's in the very remote communities there. So thankfully the major population centres were spared, but there is going to be some rebuilding that takes place over the next little while.
It's Lachlan Forsyth, who's with UNICEF up in Vanuatu. Donna is still making its way across the ocean. Obviously, we and Morning Report and everyone, RNZ News, will keep an eye on its path. Some damage being impacted on Fiji and New Caledonia. It's a very strong, slow-moving cyclone. Let's go to Rangiora now with the time at 5 minutes to 6. Cust publican Tommy Dick is promising a ripper of a night when his bar reopens tonight after being dry for a month. An administrative error left the Cust Hotel without a liquor licence. So Tommy, who has described himself as a temporary soft drink dispenser, has until tonight been unable to pour a pint. But tonight, sandwiches, party pies, cheese rolls, you name it, are on the house. And when we spoke to Tommy a short time ago via a live view, he was standing at the bar with a certain something in front of him.
That is a lovely glass of beer, John. That's one of the best pints I've ever poured. We've been waiting a month for this, eh?
So you haven't commercially poured a pint for a month?
That's absolutely right. A bit hard in the pocket as well, eh?
Yeah, what's it been like? Have people been coming in for a soft drink?
Well, yes, but obviously not as many as coming in for a beer. We have been doing our food. We've been doing our pies during the day. We've been doing our lunches at lunchtime. We've doing our bar meals in the evening, and they dropped off dramatically because of the no alcohol. But it's good to get back into it again.
Yeah, I bet it is. You're the only pub in town too, aren't you, Tommy?
We are the only pub from 15k west and 15k east. Yep, and it's a local establishment, and we don't. I mean, during the day we do very little from about 3 o'clock till 5. But once they finish work and the guys finish in the farms, they all pop in and they have a good old knees up at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And not that we need the alcohol, we just like it, right, Tommy? So we don't want to imply that everyone needs a drink, but a pub with no beer isn't much of a pub, really, is it?
It is not, no. And I put a post on the Facebook when we're going to get the licence back again with Slim Dusty's other one. I'd like to have a beer with Duncan. Because Duncan's my mate, you see, and I love to have a beer with just about everybody that comes into the pub. But we never ever get rolling drunk.
No, good. And so you are expecting a non-rolling drunk but very convivial evening this evening?
It will be a ripper, I can guarantee that. Yeah, we're putting on the food. We've got the sandwiches made, we've got the cheese rolls, everything's all done, and we're just waiting on them rolling in the door, but not rolling out the door.
No, good man. It's good that we're stressing that. What's in the Sammies?
We've got ham, cheese and tomato, we've got salmon and tomato, we've got lettuce and eggs, we've got the party pies, we've got the fish bites, we've got the fish and chips, everything's on.
Oh, have a wonderful...
And it's our shout tonight, so...
all right, bloody hell. Well, we'll see you soon, Tommy.
Yeah, well, come on down. You're welcome anytime, John.
Lovely to talk to you, Tommy. Enjoy that beer.
I will. Thank you very much.
Tommy, the publican, coming up after 6 tonight, an extended interview with Solid Energy's Chief Executive Tony King. He's broken his silence to clarify his company is not involved in a Pike River mine cover-up. He admitted today he's only spoken to Prime Minister Bill English once, briefly about Pike. He said there was only one reason to enter the drift.
to try and find bodily remains, to try and establish the cause of the initial explosion, if in fact there's anything that is observable, and anything else to do with mine safety. So the whole thrust of what we're trying to do from now on, in fact, is to address exactly those concerns that the families have.
Has it taken too long to do that?
That's an interesting question as to whether this unmanned entry is something that could or should have been done earlier.
Well, certainly there's been plenty of time for it to be done, right? This was November 2010, and we're now in May 2017. So there certainly hasn't been a rush to do it, has there?
Well, it was never actually suggested until earlier this year by the Prime Minister.
And that's because Pike River believed, and I have the document, that reclaiming the drift, staged re-entry involving people was possible.
Well, that's the view that they expressed.
Tony King, we will be running that interview at length after 6.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. The National MP, Chester Borrows, says he's frustrated by the police's decision to charge him with careless driving causing injury. The MP for Whanganui has been on trial in the Whanganui District Court over 2 women being injured at an anti-free trade protest last year. This afternoon, he was found not guilty by Judge Stephanie Edwards. Mr Borrows told Checkpoint he suspects the decision to charge him was made at Police National Headquarters, which is very unusual for a charge of careless use of a motor vehicle.
The policeman in attendance at the time wrote on his traffic crash report that the entire fault lay with the protesters being unaware of their surroundings, and there was nothing about driving speed or the vehicle that was a factor in the incident at all.
National MP Chester Borrows. The former leader of the Conservative Party, Colin Craig, wrote a letter to his press secretary saying he physically desired her but resisted going down what he called the kissing track. The letter is one of several read out today in the High Court in Auckland, where Mr Craig is suing blogger Cameron Slater for defamation. Edward Gay has been in court.
Colin Craig is suing Cameron Slater for posts on his blog site. Many relate to Mr Craig's relationship with his press secretary, Rachel McGregor. Mr Craig was questioned about kissing Miss McGregor on election night in 2011 in his office. In February, some months later, he wrote a letter to Miss McGregor saying he desired her, and while resisting kissing her, he had left the door open for her. Under questioning from Mr Slater's lawyer, Brian Henry, Mr Craig said that was his way of dealing with the issue, but he was setting boundaries. Call Edward Gay aho.
The Prime Minister, Bill English, has shot down a proposal for a Māori-based prison, saying he doesn't see the point. Labour's corrections spokesperson, Kelvin Davis, wants to convert an existing prison into one run entirely on Māori tikanga, but open to anyone. But Mr English says rehabilitation efforts in prison already take Māori values into account.
It's incorporated into our prisons where it's appropriate. We just don't see the point of trying to designate, a prison as a Māori prison and other prisons as not Māori, because actually it's going to be Māori in all our prisons.
Bill English, but the Māori Party says it's just a matter of time before the country introduces Māori-run prisons. Jakarta's outgoing Christian governor has been found guilty of blasphemy and sentenced to 2 years in jail. Calls for Basuki Purnama, commonly referred to as Ahok, to be jailed began last year after an edited version of a speech he made in 2016 appeared on the internet. Ahok was heard criticising his political detractors for using a Quranic verse to convince people not to vote for a non-Muslim. Since then, the 50-year-old says he's been the victim of a campaign of lies, which he claims contributed to his election loss last month. American senators have heard Donald Trump was warned against hiring General Michael Flynn as his national security advisor by the previous president. The head of the Justice Department under the Obama administration, Sally Yates, told a congressional panel Mr Flynn lied about his contacts with the Russian ambassador, which made him a blackmail risk. The BBC's Gary O'Donoghue reports.
In a hearing before a Senate committee, Ms Yates said she asked to see the White House counsel on the 26th of January to let him know that the National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn, had misled the Vice President and others about what was discussed during a call with the Russian ambassador at the end of December. The difficulty for President Trump is that it took 18 days after the warning before Michael Flynn was asked to resign, during which he was involved in classified contacts with Russia, Japan and others. It's also emerged that President Obama warned Mr. Trump not to hire General Flynn in an Oval Office meeting 2 days after the election.
Gary O'Donoghue in Washington. Samples from a tree in a Northland garden is being tested to see whether it has myrtle rust. A biosecurity response team from the Ministry for Primary Industries has been in Kerikeri since the yellow fungus was found at the Kerikeri Plant Production Nursery last week. A second case was found on a ramarama tree at a neighbouring property and confirmed this morning. The Ministry's Jeff Gwynn says a third suspected case at a residential property on the same road is being tested. And he says they're being kept very busy by Northland locals.
We're receiving over 100 phone calls and 150 emails a day, which is great. It gives us the best and earliest opportunity to identify any spread.
Jeff Gwynn from the Ministry for Primary Industries. It's 6:05. To sport, the Warriors playmaker Kieran Foran is expected to sign with the Canterbury Bulldogs after announcing he's leaving the Auckland National Rugby League club at the end of the season. After months of speculation, Foran has confirmed he's returning to Sydney to be closer to his children. Sally Murphy reports.
26-year-old Foran only signed a one-year deal with the Warriors, coming to Auckland as a way to get over a series of personal issues. He says he wanted to find a way of staying here, as so many people have helped him get his life and football career back on track. But ultimately, his return to Sydney is what's best for his children. While there's no word on where he'll play next year, Foran has strongly been linked to the Canterbury Bulldogs. This is Sally Murphy.
An All Blacks assistant coach says the test against Samoa will be key to deciding who's fit and ready for the British and Irish Lions test. The Samoa test on June the 16th will be the only game the All Blacks have together before the first test against the Lions the following week. Ian Foster is optimistic the likes of injured skipper Kieran Reid and fellow loose forward Jerome Kaino will be ready.
Right now it's there's a reasonably significant list, but if you look at the time frames and returning dates, we're still feeling pretty comfortable about it. So we just got to make sure that when guys are on that injured list, they're still working hard on obviously their rehab, but also other parts of the game, so that when they come back, they're ready to go pretty quickly.
The curtain raiser to the match will feature Wales against Tonga. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Phil Truesdale talks about his truck. There's quite a lot going on the back of it. Apparently, Sonia Sly meets the founder of Kiwi fashion label Stolen Girlfriends Club. Steve Braunius writes another letter to his mother. And our largely libertarian pundit Eric Crampton tackles immigration. You can bet he hasn't reached the same conclusion as Winston Peters. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Taranaki and Taumaranui, Coromandel Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Fine spells today with only isolated showers, cloud increasing tomorrow and showers becoming widespread. Gisborne to Wairarapa, also Taihape, Whanganui and Manawatu. Fine today, high cloud increasing tomorrow. Horowhenua to Wellington, cloudy periods with the odd shower. Nelson and Marlborough, cloud increasing, scattered rain developing this afternoon with heavy falls and isolated thunderstorms possible about the western ranges of Nelson. Bulla and Westland, periods of rain with heavy falls and possible thunderstorms in Bulla and northern Westland. Canterbury, Otago, Southland and Fiordland, mostly fine, however patchy rain about the Canterbury High Country today and areas of cloud or fog morning and night. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's coming up to 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much, Katrina Batten. Coming up on the program, an extended interview with the CEO of Solid Energy on why he believes the Pike River mine isn't safe to enter and what he thinks might be found in the drift. But first, he's the MP for Whanganui, Chester Burrows, has been found not guilty of a charge of careless driving causing injury. The National Party MP has been on trial in the Whanganui District Court over an incident at an anti-TPP protest last year in which 2 women were injured. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin has been in court. Hi Robin, thank you for joining us. Chester Burrows not guilty. What happened in court?
Hi John. It started off it was quite an exciting start to the day today because Mr Burrows' lawyer had applied last night to have the case thrown out essentially, and we all trekked in there this morning at 11 o'clock, and Judge Stephanie Edwards gave her findings on that, and she refused the application for the case to be dismissed. And then it was immediately signalled that Mr. Burrows and a little bit later on, his passenger on the morning of the incident, Paula Bennett, would be giving evidence. And Mr. Burrows stepped up into the witness box straight away. He was given a pretty torrid time in cross-examination by the Crown Prosecutor Ben van der Kolk, who basically accused him of over-egging the level of threat that these protesters presented to the politicians on that day. But as you can hear in this track that I think you've got, Burrows stuck to his guns that there was a threat and it was very real.
And if I can just complete the proposition,
okay.
Precisely what you did at the protection of your perception of the need to protect Minister Bennett by driving into protesters. That's my point.
Okay. Yes, I certainly do accept that I believed I needed to protect Minister Bennett. I certainly perceived that there was a threat there, and that was playing on my mind, along with obviously what I'd seen on Facebook that morning and the behaviour of the people, particularly the woman known as Donna and Philip Rewity, and that was certainly on my mind as I was driving in that situation, and obviously I'm defending the charge. I believe I was reasonable.
Chester Burrows speaking in court. Robin, then you heard from the Deputy Prime Minister herself?
Yes, Paula Bennett breathed into court in that usual manner of hers, very confident, and she told the judge that she genuinely felt concerned about this protest that she described as quite loud and, although small in number, a little bit aggressive, and she was particularly worried about the social media post that you guys have and the listeners have heard about yesterday, the social media post which featured a sex toy and some quite direct threats at her, and you'll hear that she said she was quite worried about that.
I was definitely apprehensive. I was expecting something to happen as we got close to the protesters, and the respect. I think I was probably most expecting that they would throw the sex toy at the car, and that I didn't really want a photo or to be in the news with this thing either hitting me or hitting the window right next to me.
So what did Minister Bennett say about Chester Burrows' driving?
Paula Bennett said, in that kind of situation, you couldn't think of a better person to be driving the car. An ex-cop who's had bravery awards and the whole deal, and she thought that he dealt with the situation in a perfectly reasonable manner.
I mean, I felt like we'd more or less stopped, is how it felt to me. So I felt like the car, if it was moving, it was literally inching, and at that point I would have thought that we would have stopped. I was waiting for the police to clear the protesters out of the way. I was kind of surprised that they had gone in front of the car because we were slowly approaching it, and so they'd walked out, in front of a moving vehicle.
What did Judge Stephanie Edwards have to say when she gave her decision, Robin?
Well, in her decision, she said this for a start, this did not hang on whether these women were hit by the car. That wasn't in contention. It was just whether Mr. Burrows had driven carelessly. That's a strange word to say out loud. Anyhow, she said that he was prepared to stop if police asked him to. He was aware of the people in front of him, and he would have stopped. He would have stopped if he thought people were genuinely in danger. And because of those things, it was her decision that the Crown Prosecutor had not proven his case beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Burrows had driven in a careless manner.
Robin Martin, who was in the court today, thank you so much. Earlier today, Solid Energy issued a media statement responding, and I quote, to recent inaccurate media commentary about the Pike River mine. We called Solid Energy and asked if they'd been asked to put some kind of statement out by the government. They emphatically said no, but the statement said they wanted to put the record straight. So we immediately asked Tony King if he would do that, and we spoke to him then and there, where we began by asking Solid Energy CEO, has the record been inaccurate or wrong?
Well, there's been a fair amount of media commentary over the last week or so, and over the weekend in particular, which was alleging that Solid Energy was somehow involved in a cover-up in relation to the explosion at Pike River, and we just wanted to make it very plain to people that that is not the case, that we had no involvement in the site at the time that the explosion occurred. We haven't been involved there until some 2 years later. We have no motivation to be anything other than completely transparent, and that's what we have tried to do throughout this.
You say you've tried to be transparent. When did you last give an interview prior to now?
Well, many of the issues around Pike River are very complex and very technical, and the approach that we've adopted until now is to try and put out into the public domain through our website.
How? Because I've been trying to talk to Solid Energy, for longer than I can remember, years. And so what happens, I guess, is that you put out a statement today saying, gosh, we have been cast as villains when we are not. But where have been your attempts either to talk to the families, to talk to the media, or to clarify what you now regard as aspersions falsely being cast against you?
Yeah, as I was saying, the main approach we've taken is to put out into the public domain through our website all of the information and information that has been relevant to the work we've done on site, in particular looking at the potential for a manned re-entry. It is complex. It's a most unusual site, Pike River, and the technical and operational things we have to manage there are difficult and complex, and they're not well suited often to short sound bites and a once-over lightly. So that's why we've got literally hundreds and hundreds of pages, fully disclosing all of the process and work that we went through in considering that re-entry project.
Okay, let's then eschew short sound bites and once over lightly, and you can have as much time as you need to answer this question. Why is Solid Energy so strongly opposed to re-entering, particularly the drift?
Well, we are the party who are accountable for the health and safety of the site and anybody who undertakes any activities in or around it. And when the company started on that process of looking at the manned re-entry, it turned out that there were complexities around a whole range of things, the geotechnical environment, the length of the drift, the mine atmosphere and so on. And as we worked through that and worked through all of the risk assessments, we just ended up with a very detailed, very complex, very well-researched sort of set of activities that when we got to the end of it, we recognised contained still, even after all of the work we've done to minimise the risks, a number of fatal hazards where even with the best controls we could put in place, remain just that. They were fatal risks, not necessarily highly probable, but nonetheless ones that couldn't be managed. And when the people
Okay, sorry, can I just intervene there? You say they're not necessarily highly probable. Where are they on a scale of possibility? Because Tony Forster, Bob Stevenson, Harold Gibbons, Daniel Rockhouse have all told us they are prepared to go back in because they regard the risk as so low that they are prepared to take it.
Well, that is their opinion, and it's quite possible for two groups or two individuals who are knowledgeable about mining to look at the same set of facts and reach a different conclusion based on their willingness to accept risk or not. And in our case, it was our prerogative to look at that set of facts and to make a judgment about whether those risks were acceptable or not, bearing in mind that the directors and officers of the company are the people who are actually accountable for whom it's not just a hypothetical exercise.
Absolutely. And a lot of this is conflated. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we are talking about and all of that footage predates Solid Energy's involvement in Pike River, right?
Correct.
Okay. So people are trying to work out what the hell is going on because I have in front of me the tunnel reclamation proposal on Pike River coal letterhead, authored by Gregor Ham in 2011, where they are very clear that staged re-entry is possible. So Pike was saying this in 2011. A whole lot of politicians were telling the families, we will go in and get your boys. Now, you inherited those situations, didn't you?
Yes, we have, yep.
So the public rhetoric was so different from the private rhetoric, and you were having to respond to the private, right?
Well, we were responding to the brief and the terms of reference we were given to investigate it.
And that was quite different from what the government was saying to families.
I've never tried to reconcile those. I can't comment on whether they're the same or different.
No, but can you see how the families might feel misled?
Look, I really can't comment on what the families think or feel, John.
Have you spoken to the families?
I've spoken to some family members on occasion.
Do you think it would be helpful? Do you think we would even be having this conversation today if you'd spoken to more of them more often?
That's speculation. I don't know if that is the case or not. I would suspect not, because the decision that we made in 2014 was clearly one that some of them were never going to accept.
So what do you think, what do you believe in good faith would be found if people managed to reclaim the drift? We're not talking about the mine here, the drift, which is essentially the entry to the mine.
Well, we hope to find out exactly, John. That's the purpose of the unmanned entry project, which the government announced a couple of months ago, and which we're now starting to do some detailed work on. We want to try and get a robot into the top end of that drift and explore it and see exactly.
By the top end, you mean the far end?
The far end, the end by end, yes.
And what do you think will be there?
I have no knowledge beyond that which is set out in the Royal Commission findings, which suggests that the last known position of the people, other than the two that got out, was in the mine proper. But there has been speculation that some people may have left the mine. So, I have no information beyond what's already widely known.
But somewhere at the far end, what you say is the top of the drift, there is a sort of safety room, right?
Well, I think the Royal Commission, didn't that cover that and suggest that the refuge bay had been decommissioned? The post-explosion sort of state of the underground mine and, where people may have been hasn't been a matter that has been a company responsibility. Now that we're involved in this unmanned entry project, we're starting to work through with the WorkSafe and police investigators and just try and think about exactly what might be where we should put most of our effort into looking to see what we can in fact establish.
What do you say to the men who are prepared to waiver your responsibility as an employer under health and safety rules? And you will have heard the interviews with them. We've spoken to them on Checkpoint, and some of them have already been up the drift. Some of them were responsible for working on the seal at 170 metres, and they say they are prepared to go in. Now, I understand there are workplace health and safety laws that absolutely govern your response, but why do you think they are wrong?
I think it comes back to the point I made earlier around willingness to accept risk. We are the people who are accountable if we allow people to go into the mine for which we are responsible.
But they're prepared to sign waivers, right, absolving you of responsibility?
Well, I don't even know if that's sort of legally possible.
So have you inquired as to whether that's legally possible? I mean, there are people who are lining up, mines rescue experts, some of whom have been in the drift since the explosion, who are lining up to say, we will sign something waiving all responsibility, we want to go back in. Now, once again, this is a very difficult situation for you because there are workplace health and safety laws governing it, but have you investigated whether they can sign a waiver?
Well, waivers or law changes don't make the situation any safer. And, while it might make something legal, it doesn't deal with the moral and ethical considerations around people being put at risk. And I can only repeat that as the directors and officers of the company are the people who are liable under the Health and Safety Act and the people who have to front up to families if anything goes wrong and ultimately to a judge if anything goes wrong. We're very thoughtful about those risks and those decisions and, we've made them accordingly. In terms of the next stage of where this is heading, it is in for the unmanned entry of those parts of the mine that haven't yet been looked at, and that is explicitly to try and find bodily remains, to try and establish the cause of the initial explosion, if in fact there's anything that is observable, and anything else to do with mine safety. So the whole thrust of what we're trying to do from now on in fact, is to address exactly those concerns that the families have.
Has it taken too long to do that?
That's an interesting question as to whether this unmanned entry is something that could or should have been done earlier.
Well, certainly there's been plenty of time for it to be done, right? This was November 2010, and we're now in May 2017. So there certainly hasn't been a rush to do it, has there?
Well, it was never actually suggested until earlier this year by the Prime Minister.
And that's because Pike River believed, and I have the document, that reclaiming the drift, staged re-entry involving people was possible.
Well, that's the view that they expressed. And the technical feasibility, we came up with a very detailed plan as to how it might be done, but the assessment of the risk from a safety point of view was what led to the decision not to proceed.
Have you watched the footage?
I've watched excerpts of it. It's a fairly hard watch. It's somewhat tedious. But I had a look at excerpts of the robot footage, and I've been reviewing some of the borehole footage as well.
But there was also that footage of, the shot I've seen, which is really striking, is a man very clearly walking along the drift. He's not in the container, he's out in the drift, and he is wearing breathing apparatus, but he's also wearing bog standard gumboots, cotton overalls, and he has bare hands. Now, are you surprised that shot wasn't shown to the families?
Oh, look, I don't know. I can't really comment. I mean, that was done before we were involved, and I can't think of any particular reason why it would have been withheld or shown. I mean, I think the interest was in what the robot was going to show as it travelled up the drift, not the process of actually physically getting the robot through the airlock into the start of the drift so that it could start its journey.
But doesn't that speak to the possibility of entering the drift? I mean, absolutely health and safety laws are really clear. You cannot expose people to risk, but someone exposed that man to risk, and he's alive and well. So isn't that really material?
Well, speaking as a mining person, I don't read anything like that much into it. There was obviously a very strong desire to try and get a robot up the drift to establish, what was up there, if anything. There had to be a process to get the robot from, off the truck and outside to inside the mine, so it had to be got through the airlock in order for that to take place. So I'm completely unsurprised to see some mines rescue people doing that task. Otherwise, the robot wouldn't be able to get in and go where it went.
But they were in the drift, right?
They were just through, my understanding, and as I say, I had no involvement in it, but my understanding is that they were just through the airlock into the start of the drift.
Right, and the atmosphere, but once you're in the drift, unless there's a seal there, once you're in the drift, the atmosphere doesn't change. I mean, can you see how confusing this is for the families? Let's just work on the best possible interpretation of this. It's really confusing that on the one hand, they are repeatedly being told that going into the drift, they're repeatedly being told by Solid Energy and the government that going into the drift exposes whoever does it to a very real risk. I mean, you've said it during this interview. And I absolutely accept you're saying it in good faith. On the other hand, here is footage of a man wandering around in the drift. And this is in March of 2011. The atmosphere is now more settled, more known, and more controllable.
It's still 98% methane, and it is still a very long way from where that footage was taken at the entrance to the mine up to the area of interest, which is the far end of that drift. It's that sort of 1,600 to 2.4 kilometre part. So there's an awful lot of tunnel you have to traverse in order to get to the area of interest.
Have you spoken to Peter Whittle lately?
Never.
Never spoken to Peter Whittle?
Well, not since about 2008 or something.
No, and he has rather disappeared without trace, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, I have no knowledge of where he is or what he's doing.
He's running a retirement village or something in New South Wales. Are you surprised by, and I want to say explicitly on the record, this precedes you and predates you in every possible way, are you surprised by the absenteeism, the lack of culpability, the disappearing without trace of all of the managers who were involved at that time when 29 people died?
I think I'm probably like most people in New Zealand and am, shocked and appalled at what happened, surprised and disappointed that that hasn't been possible apparently to hold anyone to account for that. I'm a mine manager by training and background, and it was always part of my sort of ethos and expectation that laws were there to be kept and to keep mines and mine workers safe, and that if anything went badly wrong, then there would be significant consequences for those people who are responsible. So I am surprised and disappointed, like most people, I think, John.
What next? How can this be resolved? So, please forgive me for using this term, I wish I could think of a better one, but so there can be a sense of closure for the families. So you can talk to the families and say, we have done the right thing, haven't we? Will that kind of resolution ever be reached?
I don't know, but the constructive things that we can do and which we are doing is to pursue this unmanned exploration project. That may and certainly it's my hope that will lead us to a point where we know with certainty as to whether there are any bodily remains in the drift, and it will also give us potentially the opportunity to look at some areas which may give some insights into the cause of the initial explosion, and both of those would be, I think, helpful things. I would suspect would be helpful things for the family, and we just need to work our way through this assessment that's underway now to determine whether we can do it.
Tony King, the CEO of Solid Energy, speaking earlier this afternoon, bringing Checkpoint to an end for tonight. Thank you for being with us. We will be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The National MP, Chester Borrow, says he's not surprised to have been found innocent of a driving charge. The Prime Minister, Bill English, has shot down a proposal for a Māori-based prison, saying he doesn't see the point. Cyclone Donna is passing near New Caledonia's Loyalty Islands with winds of 230